Captain Marcus stood at the tall windows of the palace corridor, watching the morning sun paint golden streaks across the marble floors. He had been a royal guard for 15 years, and in all that time he had never seen the palace feel so empty. Queen Isabella had passed away 3 months ago, and the entire kingdom still felt her absence like a cold wind that never stopped blowing. The palace servants moved quietly through the halls, their footsteps muffled on the thick carpets. Everyone spoke in whispers now, as if loud voices might disturb the Queen's spirit. Marcus remembered how different things used to be when Queen Isabella was alive. Her laughter would echo through these same corridors, and the palace would buzz with life and activity. Marcus adjusted his sword belt and began his morning patrol through the royal quarters. These rooms had been sealed since the Queen's death, waiting for the royal family to decide what to do with her personal belongings. The heavy wooden doors were locked, and only a few trusted servants were allowed inside to clean and maintain the rooms. As he walked past the Queen's private chambers, Marcus heard a soft sound from within. He stopped and listened carefully. There it was again, a gentle rustling, like fabric moving against fabric. His hand instinctively moved to his sword handle. No one was supposed to be in there at this hour. Marcus had the master key to all the royal chambers. He quietly unlocked the door and pushed it open just enough to peer inside. The morning light filtered through the heavy curtains, casting long shadows across the room. Everything looked exactly as it had been left. The Queen's writing desk with its silver inkwell, her favorite chair by the fireplace, and the large portrait of her late husband hanging on the wall. Then he saw movement near the Queen's dressing table. A figure in a dark blue dress was kneeling beside the ornate wooden cabinet where the Queen kept her most precious jewelry. The woman's back was turned to him, but Marcus could see her carefully placing something into a small cloth bag. Marcus recognized her immediately. It was Lady Catherine, one of the Queen's former ladies-in-waiting. She had served Queen Isabella for over 10 years and had been one of her most trusted companions. Lady Catherine was known throughout the court for her gentle manner and her devotion to the Queen. Seeing her here, in this forbidden room, doing something so suspicious, made Marcus feel like the ground was shifting beneath his feet. Lady Catherine was around 30 years old, with dark brown hair that she always wore in a neat bun. She came from a noble family, but they had fallen on hard times in recent years. Her father had lost most of his lands in a bad business deal, and her family now lived in a modest house in the capital city. Despite their reduced circumstances, Lady Catherine had always carried herself with dignity and grace. Marcus watched as she continued to place items into her bag. He could see the glint of gold and the sparkle of gemstones. These were not ordinary pieces of jewelry. They were the Queen's most valuable treasures, items that had been in the royal family for generations. Some of them were gifts from foreign kings and queens. Others were family heirlooms that had been passed down for centuries. The captain felt his heart racing. He had always liked Lady Catherine. She had been kind to the guards and servants, never treating them as if they were beneath her notice. She often remembered their names and asked about their families. During the Queen's illness, Lady Catherine had worked tirelessly, staying by the Queen's bedside day and night, reading to her and making sure she was comfortable. But now here she was, stealing from the dead Queen's collection. Marcus felt a mixture of anger and sadness. How could someone he had respected do something so terrible? How could she betray the memory of the Queen she had served so faithfully? Lady Catherine stood up slowly, clutching the bag to her chest. She turned toward the door, and her eyes met Marcus's. For a moment, neither of them moved. Her face went completely white, and Marcus could see the fear in her eyes. She looked like a deer that had been caught in a hunter's trap. "Lady Catherine," Marcus said quietly, stepping into the room. His voice was steady, but inside he felt terrible about what he had to do. "Captain Marcus," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She was trembling now, and Marcus could see tears beginning to form in her eyes. "What are you doing here?" he asked, though they both knew the answer. Lady Catherine looked down at the bag in her hands, then back up at Marcus. "I can explain," she said, but her voice broke on the words. Marcus closed the door behind him and walked closer to her. "Show me what's in the bag," he said firmly. With shaking hands, Lady Catherine opened the cloth bag. Inside, Marcus could see some of the Queen's most beautiful jewelry. There was a necklace made of sapphires and diamonds that the Queen had worn to state dinners. There were matching earrings that had belonged to the Queen's grandmother. There was a golden bracelet with emeralds that had been a gift from the King of France. "These belonged to Queen Isabella," Marcus said, his voice heavy with disappointment. "I know," Lady Catherine whispered, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "I know they did." Marcus felt torn between his duty as a guard and his sympathy for Lady Catherine. He had heard rumors that her family was in serious financial trouble. Her younger brother was sick and needed expensive medicine. Her father had debts that he couldn't pay. But none of that justified stealing from the royal family, especially from the Queen who had been so good to her. "Why, Catherine?" he asked, using her first name for the first time in all the years he had known her. "The Queen trusted you. She loved you like a daughter. How could you do this to her memory?" Lady Catherine sobbed quietly. "My family," she managed to say between tears. "We have nothing left. My brother is dying, and we can't afford the medicine he needs. My father borrowed money from dangerous people, and they're threatening to hurt us if we don't pay them back." I didn't know what else to do. Marcus felt a pain in his chest as he listened to her explanation. He understood desperation. He had grown up poor himself before joining the Royal Guard. But understanding didn't change what she had done. "There had to be another way," he said gently. "You could have asked for help. The royal family is generous to those who have served them faithfully." "I tried," Catherine said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "I sent letters to the princess, explaining our situation. But she's been so busy with the funeral arrangements and taking care of the kingdom's business. I never received a reply. Time was running out and I was so frightened. I thought maybe if I just took a few pieces, no one would notice for a while. I thought I could find a way to return them later." Marcus knew that the princess had indeed been overwhelmed since her mother's death. She was trying to learn how to rule a kingdom while also dealing with her grief. It was possible that Catherine's letters had been lost among the hundreds of other messages the princess received every day, but that still didn't make theft acceptable. Marcus had sworn an oath to protect the royal family and their property. He had a duty to uphold, no matter how much it hurt his heart. "I have to report this," he said quietly. "You know that, don't you?" Lady Catherine nodded, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I understand," she whispered. "I've disgraced myself and dishonored the Queen's memory. I deserve whatever punishment comes." Marcus took the bag from her hands and looked at the beautiful jewelry inside. Each piece told a story of the Queen's life, her wedding, her coronation, gifts from her children, mementos from important state visits. These weren't just valuable objects, they were pieces of history and memory. "I'm sorry," Catherine said again. "I'm so very sorry." Marcus looked at her tear-stained face and felt his resolve wavering. This was one of the hardest things he had ever had to do as a guard. But he knew that if he didn't follow the rules, if he let personal feelings influence his duty, then the whole system of law and order in the kingdom would begin to break down. "I'm going to have to escort you out of the palace," he said finally, "and I'll have to inform the princess about what happened here." Lady Catherine nodded again, accepting her fate with the same grace she had always shown, even in this moment of her greatest shame. Marcus walked beside Lady Catherine through the long palace corridors, carrying the bag of stolen jewelry in one hand while his other hand rested on his sword. Other servants and guards they passed looked surprised to see Lady Catherine being escorted this way, but Marcus kept his expression serious and professional. He didn't want to make her humiliation worse by showing any emotion. Lady Catherine held her head up as they walked, trying to maintain some dignity, even though everyone could probably guess what was happening. Her face was still pale, but she had stopped crying. Marcus admired her courage, even in this terrible situation. When they reached the main entrance of the palace, Marcus stopped. "Lady Catherine," he said formally, "by the authority given to me as captain of the Royal Guard, I am ordering you to leave the palace grounds immediately. You are no longer welcome here." The words felt like stones in his mouth. Lady Catherine had been part of the palace family for so many years. She knew every servant's name, every guard's story. She had helped organize the Queen's charity work and had personally delivered food to poor families in the city. Now she was being thrown out like a common criminal. "I understand, Captain Marcus," she said quietly. "I will go." As Lady Catherine walked down the palace steps for the last time, Marcus felt a heavy weight in his chest. He watched her figure grow smaller as she moved away from the palace, her blue dress bright against the gray morning sky. Part of him wanted to call her back, to find some way to help her. But duty was duty, and he had sworn an oath to protect the royal family above all else. Marcus turned and walked back into the palace, heading straight to Princess Elena's chambers. The princess was now the ruler of the kingdom, though she wouldn't officially be crowned queen for several more months. She was only 22 years old and was still learning how to handle all the responsibilities that came with ruling a nation. He knocked on the door to her private office and heard her voice call out, "Enter!" Princess Elena was sitting at her mother's old desk, surrounded by stacks of papers and documents. She looked tired, with dark circles under her eyes. Her long blonde hair was pulled back in a simple braid, and she was wearing a plain black dress. She was still in mourning for her mother. "Captain Marcus," she said, looking up from her work. "What brings you here so early?" Marcus bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, I'm afraid I have some troubling news to report." The princess set down her pen and gave him her full attention. "What's wrong?" Marcus told her everything that had happened in the Queen's chambers. He described finding Lady Catherine with the jewelry, their conversation, and how he had escorted her from the palace. As he spoke, he watched the princess's expression change from surprise to sadness to anger. When he finished his report, Princess Elena was quiet for a long moment. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the palace gardens where her mother used to love to walk. "Catherine," she said softly, "I can't believe it." "I'm sorry, Your Highness," Marcus said. "I know she was important to your mother." Princess Elena turned back to face him. "She was like family to us. When I was a child, she used to read me bedtime stories when my mother was too busy with kingdom business. She taught me how to embroider and how to dance. I trusted her completely." Marcus could hear the pain in the princess's voice. He knew this betrayal hurt her deeply, especially coming so soon after losing her mother. "What should we do about this, Captain?" the princess asked. "What does the law say about stealing from the royal family?" Marcus straightened his shoulders. "The penalty for theft of royal property is severe, Your Highness. The law calls for imprisonment and heavy fines. In the past, such crimes have sometimes been punished by exile from the kingdom." Princess Elena closed her eyes and took a deep breath. "I see. And there's no doubt about what she did?" "None, Your Highness. I saw her with my own eyes, and she admitted to taking the jewelry." The princess walked back to her desk and sat down heavily. "This is so hard," she said. "Everything is so hard right now. I feel like I'm drowning in responsibilities. And now this happens with someone I thought I could trust." Marcus felt sympathy for the young princess. She was dealing with more pressure than most people twice her age. Losing her mother had been devastating enough, but now she had to rule a kingdom while still grieving. "Your Highness," Marcus said carefully, "there is something else you should know. Lady Catherine mentioned that she had written to you asking for help with her family's financial problems." The princess looked confused. "I never received any letters from Catherine about money troubles. She said her brother is very sick and needs expensive medicine. Her family has fallen into debt with dangerous people." Princess Helena frowned and called for her secretary, a thin man named Lord William, who managed her correspondence. When he arrived, she asked him about letters from Lady Catherine. Lord William looked through his records and found several letters that had arrived over the past few weeks. "I'm sorry, Your Highness," he said, looking embarrassed. "These must have gotten mixed in with the condolence letters from the Queen's funeral. With so many messages coming in, some of the personal requests may have been overlooked." Princess Helena read through Catherine's letters quickly. Marcus could see her expression growing more troubled with each page. "Oh no," the princess whispered. She was desperate. Her brother is only 14 years old and he needs surgery that costs more money than her family has ever seen. She was asking for a loan, not a gift. She promised to work for the palace for free for years to pay it back. Marcus felt his heart sink even further. If only those letters had reached the princess sooner, none of this would have happened. Lady Catherine wouldn't have felt so desperate, and she wouldn't have made such a terrible mistake. "This doesn't excuse what she did," Princess Helena said firmly, "but it helps me understand why she did it." She stood up again and paced around the room, thinking hard. Marcus could see that she was struggling with this decision. As a ruler, she had to uphold the law and show that stealing from the royal family had serious consequences. But as a person who had cared about Lady Catherine, she wanted to show mercy. "Captain Marcus," the princess said finally, "I want you to find Lady Catherine and bring her back to the palace. But don't arrest her. Just ask her to come speak with me." Marcus was surprised. "Your Highness, are you sure that's wise? She might run away if she knows you want to see her." "She won't run," the princess said confidently. "Catherine has always been honest and brave. If you tell her I want to speak with her, she'll come." Marcus bowed. "As you wish, Your Highness." "And Captain," the princess added as he reached the door, "please don't tell anyone else about this situation yet. I want to handle this carefully." Marcus spent the rest of the morning searching for Lady Catherine. He knew she lived with her family in a small house near the market square, so he headed there first. The house was easy to find. It was one of the smaller buildings on a street where many of the court's minor nobles lived when they couldn't afford homes closer to the palace. When he knocked on the door, a young man answered. Marcus could see immediately that this was Catherine's brother. They had the same dark hair and gentle eyes, but the boy looked very sick. His skin was pale, and he was very thin. "I'm looking for Lady Catherine," Marcus said kindly. "Is she here?" The boy called for his sister, and Catherine appeared in the doorway. She looked surprised to see Marcus and a bit frightened. "Captain Marcus? What are you doing here?" "Princess Helena wants to speak with you," he said. "She asks that you come to the palace with me." Lady Catherine's face went even whiter than before. "Is she going to have me arrested?" "I don't know," Marcus said honestly. "But she specifically asked me not to arrest you. She just wants to talk." Catherine looked back at her sick brother and her elderly father who had appeared behind her. Marcus could see the love and worry in her eyes. "I'll come," she said quietly. "But if something happens to me, please remember that my family had nothing to do with what I did. They didn't even know." Marcus nodded. "I'll remember." As they walked back to the palace together, Marcus found himself hoping that Princess Helena would find a way to show mercy. Lady Catherine had made a terrible mistake, but she wasn't a bad person. She was just someone who had been pushed to desperation by circumstances beyond her control. The palace looked different to Lady Catherine as they approached it this time. A few hours ago, it had been her second home, a place where she belonged. Now it felt like a fortress where she was no longer welcome. But she walked beside Marcus with her head held high, ready to face whatever judgment awaited her. Princess Elena was waiting in the palace's small private sitting room when Captain Marcus arrived with Lady Catherine. This room had been Queen Isabella's favorite place for intimate conversations, decorated with soft blue curtains and comfortable chairs arranged around a warm fireplace. The princess had chosen this room deliberately. She wanted this meeting to feel personal, not like a formal court proceeding. When Lady Catherine entered the room, she immediately dropped into a deep curtsy. "Your Highness," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please sit down, Catherine," Princess Elena said gently, gesturing to the chair across from her own. "Captain Marcus, you may go. I'd like to speak with Lady Catherine privately." Marcus hesitated for a moment. "Your Highness, are you certain you want to be alone with her?" The princess gave him a reassuring smile. "Catherine has been part of my family since I was a child. I'm not afraid of her." After Marcus left, closing the door softly behind him, the two women sat in silence for a moment. Princess Elena studied Catherine's face, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the way her hands trembled slightly in her lap. "I read your letters," the princess said finally. "All of them. I'm so sorry that they were lost in all the correspondence after my mother's funeral." Lady Catherine looked up in surprise. "You found them?" "My secretary discovered them this morning. Catherine, why didn't you come to me directly? You know you could have asked to see me at any time." Fresh tears began to flow down Catherine's cheeks. "I wanted to, Your Highness. But you've been dealing with so much since the Queen's death. The whole kingdom is depending on you now. My problems seemed so small compared to everything you're facing." Princess Elena leaned forward in her chair. "Your problems are never small to me, Catherine. You were my mother's dearest friend, and you're important to me too." "I've disgraced myself," Catherine said, wiping her eyes. "I've dishonored your mother's memory and betrayed your trust. I don't deserve your kindness." The princess was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "What you did was wrong, Catherine. Stealing is always wrong, no matter what the circumstances. But I understand why you felt so desperate." She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the gardens where she and Catherine had played together as children. "Tell me about your brother. The letters mentioned that he's very sick." Catherine's voice broke as she began to speak. "Thomas is only 14, Your Highness. 6 months ago, he started having terrible pains in his stomach. The local doctor said he needed surgery, but it's the kind of operation that only the best physicians in the capital can perform. The cost is more money than my family has ever seen." "And your father's debts?" "After grandfather died, father made some bad investments trying to restore our family's fortune. He borrowed money from merchants in the city, promising to pay them back with profits that never came. Now they're demanding payment, and some of them aren't the kind of people who accept excuses." Princess Elena turned back to face Catherine. "How much money do you need?" "For Thomas's surgery and to pay father's debts, about 500 gold pieces." The princess nodded thoughtfully. "That's a significant amount, but not impossible to manage." Catherine looked at her with confusion. "Your Highness, I don't understand. Are you saying you might help us, even after what I've done?" "I'm trying to decide what my mother would have wanted me to do," Princess Elena said, sitting back down. "She always believed that people could make mistakes and still deserve forgiveness, especially when they were trying to protect their families." The princess picked up a small wooden box from the table beside her chair and opened it. Inside were some of the pieces of jewelry that Catherine had tried to steal, the ones Marcus had recovered from her bag. "These belong to my mother," she said, holding up the sapphire necklace. "But more than that, they represent something important about our kingdom. They represent the idea that those who serve faithfully should be cared for in return. Catherine stared at the jewelry, remembering all the times she had helped the Queen choose which pieces to wear for different occasions. I loved her so much, Your Highness. She was like a mother to me after my own mother died. I know you did, and she loved you too. That's why this situation breaks my heart so much. Princess Elena put the jewelry back in the box and closed it. Catherine, I'm going to make you an offer. But I need you to understand that if you accept it, there will be conditions that you must follow exactly. Catherine straightened in her chair, hope beginning to flicker in her eyes. I will provide the money for your brother's surgery and help your family pay off their debts. In exchange, you will work for the royal household for the next 10 years without salary. All of your wages will go toward repaying the debt. Your Highness, Catherine gasped. That's incredibly generous, but I can't accept charity. It's not charity, the princess said firmly. It's a loan with a very specific repayment plan. But there are other conditions, too. She stood up and began pacing slowly around the room. First, you can never enter the royal family's private chambers again without explicit permission. Second, you will publicly apologize to the entire court for what you did. Third, you will spend 1 day each week working with the kingdom's charity organizations, helping other families who are facing financial difficulties. Catherine listened to each condition with growing amazement. You're offering me a chance to redeem myself? I'm offering you a chance to prove that today was an aberration, not a reflection of who you really are, Princess Elena corrected. But Catherine, this is the only chance you'll get. If you ever betray the royal family's trust again, the punishment will be severe and final. Without hesitation, Catherine dropped to her knees in front of the princess's chair. I accept your conditions, Your Highness. All of them. I swear by my mother's memory and my brother's life that I will spend every day of the next 10 years proving that I'm worthy of this mercy. Princess Elena reached down and helped Catherine back to her feet. There's one more thing. This arrangement stays between us, Captain Marcus, and my secretary. As far as everyone else knows, you came to me asking for help with your family's situation, and I decided to grant it in honor of your faithful service to my mother. But why? Catherine asked, confused. Wouldn't it be better for people to know that you're showing mercy to someone who made a mistake? The princess smiled sadly. Because if people know you tried to steal, some of them will never trust you again, no matter how well you prove yourself in the future. You deserve a chance to rebuild your reputation without that shadow following you. Catherine began to cry again, but these were tears of relief and gratitude rather than shame and fear. Your Highness, I don't know how to thank you. Don't thank me yet, Princess Elena said. Thank me in 10 years when you've kept all of your promises. Later that afternoon, Captain Marcus was called back to the princess's office. He found her working at her desk again, but she looked much more relaxed than she had that morning. Captain, I've made a decision about Lady Catherine's situation. Marcus stood at attention, waiting to hear what punishment the princess had decided upon. I'm going to help her family with their financial problems in exchange for 10 years of service. Lady Catherine will continue working for the royal household, but under strict conditions. Marcus was surprised by this decision, but he tried not to show it on his face. And the theft, Your Highness, will be kept between the three of us. As far as anyone else knows, Lady Catherine came to me asking for help. And I granted it. The captain thought about this for a moment. Your Highness, forgive me for asking, but are you sure this is the right decision? If other people hear about your generosity, they might think they can take advantage of it. Princess Elena looked up from her papers and met his eyes. Captain Marcus, what do you think makes a good ruler? Strength, Your Highness. Justice. The ability to enforce the law fairly. Those are all important, she agreed. But I think there's something else that's just as important. The wisdom to know when mercy serves justice better than punishment. She stood up and walked over to the window again, a habit she seemed to have developed since her mother's death. Catherine made a terrible mistake, but she made it out of love for her family. She wasn't trying to get rich or live a life of luxury. She was trying to save her brother's life. Marcus nodded slowly. "I understand, Your Highness." "Besides," the princess added with a slight smile, 10 years of unpaid service to the royal family is hardly a light punishment. She'll be working harder than ever to prove herself worthy of this second chance." As the months passed, Lady Catherine proved true to her word. She worked tirelessly for the royal household, taking on extra duties and never complaining about the long hours. She helped organize the kingdom's charity work and personally assisted dozens of families facing financial hardship. Thomas's surgery was successful, and he made a complete recovery. The family's debts were paid off, and they were able to keep their home. Catherine's father, humbled by the experience and grateful for the princess's mercy, gave up his risky business ventures and found steady work as a clerk for the royal treasury. Princess Elena watched Catherine carefully during those first few months, looking for any sign that her trust had been misplaced. But Catherine proved herself over and over again, working with dedication and honesty that impressed everyone around her. One day, almost a year after the incident in Queen Isabella's chambers, Captain Marcus was walking through the palace when he saw Catherine teaching a group of noble children how to arrange flowers. She was laughing at something one of the children had said, and her face was bright with genuine happiness. Marcus realized that Princess Elena had been right to show mercy. Sometimes the best way to prevent future crimes wasn't through harsh punishment, but through giving people a chance to prove they were better than their worst moments. The kingdom prospered under Princess Elena's wise and compassionate rule. And years later, when she was officially crowned Queen Elena, one of her most trusted advisors was Lady Catherine, who had spent a decade proving that people could change, and that mercy was sometimes the strongest form of justice.